Schools in the Stars 25 years after Earth's expulsion from the Galactic Council. The kidney of the galaxy had ceased to be an exile and had transformed into a cradle. Not of empires in the traditional sense. There were no flags, no forced conquests, no subjugation, but of something rarer, a place where different civilizations chose to grow together. And amidst floating colonies, autonomous shipyards, and interstellar trading stations, there was something that surprised even the most skeptical: schools. Schools open to any young person of any species, as long as they brought one thing: curiosity. Kepler Academy was one of them. It orbited a dwarf planet rich in resonance crystals, in a system once considered uninhabitable. Now, it was one of the most vibrant learning centers of the human confederation. Its structure resembled less a building and more a cosmic tree. Modules interconnected by tunnels of gentle energy, classrooms that adapted to the number of students, and floating gardens where students of half a dozen species discussed quantum physics while harvesting bioluminescent fruits. Kael was one of the few Veltar there. Son of two high-ranking officials of the old council, he had run away from home at 16, trading the ceremonial robes of his caste for a gray academy uniform. Not because he hated his parents, he loved them deeply, but because he could no longer bear living in a world where asking why was considered a sign of emotional instability. In the Confederacy, asking was the first step to creating. On the first day, he was greeted by Myra, a human who had been born aboard an orbital shipyard. Her eyes always seemed to sparkle with a new idea, and she spoke with her hands as if words weren't enough. "Are you Veltar?" she asked bluntly. "I heard you single-handedly deciphered the communication protocol of the old Zephyrus aboard sensors. Is that true?" Kael blushed. "It was just logic. Logic with style," she replied, tossing a small device in his direction. "Hold this. It's an adaptive neural translator. It still has some bugs, but it works best with low-frequency species like the Veltar. I need someone who understands resonance patterns to test version 4.2. That's how the friendship began. Days later, they met Tav, a Gathri whose species had nearly disappeared under the weight of the Council's bureaucracy. The Gathri were masters of biological engineering, capable of growing entire factories from metal seeds. But the Council had forbidden them from interfering with the structural integrity of inorganic materials. In the Confederacy, Tav led the Living Factories project, which today built ships in weeks, not decades. The three became inseparable. They studied together, argued about ideas, and laughed at their cultural differences, like the fact that Kael needed absolute silence to meditate, while Myra listened to old human music, rock, she called it, to concentrate. Tav, for his part, loved to cook, but only used ingredients that he had grown himself in his bioengineering module. It was on one of those late-night study sessions that the crisis began. An alarm sounded throughout the station. Critical failure in the crystal reactors. Energy was dissipating faster than the system could regenerate. Within 12 hours, Kepler Academy would lose life support. The maintenance teams, all composed of adults, were trying to stabilize the main core, but the crystals donated by the Nethys were entering uncontrolled resonance. Someone somewhere had altered the containment parameters without registering the change. "They're treating this as a mistake," Kael murmured, observing the data on the lab terminal. "But it's not a mistake, it's a response." Myra approached. "An answer to what?" "The crystals at Nethys are not inert. They react to the collective emotional environment. If the station is stressed, and it is with all this tension, they go into defense mode." Tav frowned, his bioluminescent eyebrows turning furrowed. "So we're trying to force something that's just trying to protect us." "Exactly," said Kael. "But adults don't see it that way. They see machines, not organisms." Myra gave the table a light punch. "Then let's show them there's another way." That night, the three of them didn't sleep. Instead of trying to fix the crystals with code or brute force, they delved into hybrid solutions. Myra connected her experimental AI, made with fragments of Nethys code and human intuition algorithms, to the station's sensors. Tav cultivated a new type of bioconductor, capable of modulating energy fields based on emotional frequencies. And Kael, using his Veltar training in collective harmony, designed a gentle, almost musical resonance field that didn't strain the crystals, but invited them to calm down. It worked. In less than 4 hours, the crystals returned to stability. Energy flowed more smoothly than before. And most surprisingly, the sensors registered a slight increase in the creativity of students in nearby classrooms, as if the station itself had breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, the teachers summoned the 3 of them. They expected a reprimand. Instead, they received an invitation. "You solved a problem that our team of engineers didn't understand in 3 days," said the Academy's director, a middle-aged human named Dr. Alara. "More than that, you did it using 3 different approaches from 3 distinct species and merged them into a solution that none of us could have imagined on our own." She paused. That's exactly what the Confederation was created to be. From that day forward, the 3 were appointed coordinators of the Academy's new project, Hybrid Solutions Workshops, open to all students, where real-world problems, from energy failures to cultural conflicts, were solved in multi-species teams. Kael wrote to his parents for the first time in years, not to ask for forgiveness but to invite them to visit the Academy. "You thought humanity was chaotic," he wrote, "but the chaos here has order. It's the kind of chaos that builds." Myra, for her part, was recruited by the Confederation's Innovation Department even before graduating, but she refused. "I want to stay here," she said. "It's in schools that the future is truly made, not in boardrooms." Years later, Tav would found the first symbiotic engineering university on a newly colonized world, where humans, Gathri, Nethys, and other species would teach together that technology doesn't have to be cold. It can breathe, grow, and adapt, like any life form. Kepler Academy became a model for dozens of others. Today, there are more than 200 interstellar schools scattered throughout the Confederation. Each has its own identity, but they all share one principle. The future does not belong to governments, armies, or councils. It belongs to those who dare to learn together. And on quiet nights when the stations orbit unknown planets and classes end, it's common to see a group of young people, with silvery skin, luminous scales, multiple eyes, or just tired human eyes, sitting in floating gardens, discussing not how to dominate the universe, but how to understand it better. They laugh loudly, share stories of worlds that barely fit on old maps, and dream of technologies that don't even have names yet. None of them knew the fear that the Council felt for humanity, but they all know that, if it weren't for those who refused fear and chose to trust, none of this would exist. Because in the end, humanity's greatest weapon was never a cannon, a warp drive, or an invincible AI. It was something simpler, older, and more powerful, the ability to reach out, even when rejected, and say, "Let's build something better, together." And that is exactly what they did. Not an empire of steel, but a garden of ideas. Not a war fleet, but a constellation of schools. And in that garden, under that constellation, the universe finally began to heal the wounds left by centuries of fear, hierarchy, and stagnation. The veteran council leaders, when visiting these schools, would often stand in silence for long minutes. They would observe the young people collaborating, creating, making mistakes, and trying again, without asking permission, without waiting for committees, without fear of the new. And then, with choked voices, some would whisper, "Is this what we were trying to avoid?" Yes, that was exactly it, and it was beautiful.